Welcome back to Marcelian Online. We have a brand new video in 2025 and it's a complaint video, of course, because we hate these tier sets, man. We hate them. They're lazy. We have complaints. Well, we shall wrap this up as feedback, but we have to talk about this because it's unacceptable.
Yeah, it's especially with the recent release of the PTR that we actually get to test these sets out. The power is still underwhelming for some of them, but let's talk about the design first.
Yeah, the philosophy behind this, okay? Because I strongly believe because it's a Goblin expansion and it's all themed around everything that's happening with the Goblin culture, the tier sets would actually be translated into that. Well, first off, yeah, the names.
The tooltip sounds the first half of the tooltip.
Yeah, so you have the jackpot, the insurance, things that you would normally probably associate with goblins. That's fair.
Sure.
Winning streak, all of that. Okay. The actual effects that get into action 2-set and 4-set are as plain as they ever were in the history of World of Warcraft. Now, call me crazy, but when I saw the expansion theme and it's undermined, it's goblins, I would expect the actual mechanics of the tier set bonuses to translate, not just the naming, the mechanics. Like, okay, you're playing a red paladin, your Templar Verdict has a chance to explode some weird bombs around
throws
your target,
grenades,
something like that. The light transforms into a green ooze that damages over time. Actually have it themed around it. Instead, we got this whole pattern placed on all specs with the winning streak, the jackpot, the insurance, all that shit, and they all actually translate into small buffs, stacking buffs to your existing abilities.
Some of them being very underwhelming buffs. The main issue that I had, and I don't remember if we talked about this during the wrap-up initially when they were announced.
We didn't.
No, we just probably saw them on stream because I don't remember talking about it. But the two sets is very lazy. So first of all, on the front, every healer has the same 2-set, every melee has the same 2-set, every range has the same 2-set, and every tank has the same 2-set.
Which is quite lazy.
Did
we mention it's lazy?
That's lazy. Okay, but it's not just that it's lazy. The effect doesn't match the theme of the patch. It's just in its name, right? And its name, you can say, oh my god, it's a gambling thing, RNG,
sure.
Chaos, explosion, tinkery stuff. Okay, fair. But it doesn't translate into the actual gameplay, especially when some sets actually buff. For the melee particularly, they buff you, but you have a chance to negate that buff by using a very core...
The same ability. I can give the example for Unholy Decay here.
All right.
Okay, because this is crazy. Some other melees have it different, but we'll get to them, okay? Because, I didn't want to get to that fast, but since we're here, might as well, okay? So basically, all of your abilities have a chance to buff your Epidemic and your Death Coil by 3%, stacking up 10 times.
All right.
Okay, so you can basically get a 30% buff to Epidemic and Death Coil. The continuation is Epidemic and Death Coil have a 15% chance to cancel the buff. What? What do you mean?
I think this is similar to Frost Decay, where you get the buffs on Frost Strike and Glacial Advance, but
Obliteration will cancel it.
Has a chance to cancel it, and Obliterate is the main damage source of Frost Death Knight, but the buffs are being shoved to the spenders, which are relatively low. This feels... I don't know how to take this because this is very wonky, and sometimes we criticize the devs for not taking risks high enough. But even if they take risks, it feels, first of all, that it's disconnected with what the gameplay of the spec is. And not to mention, dude, for a regular person, a person that doesn't read articles on Wowhead on whether or not this is good and how it functions, who doesn't watch a guide on it, who doesn't do sims and calculations on external websites that you have to pop in to figure out exactly how much damage you gain, how will they know that this is a good set?
It's this big trap. Now, there is a quote-unquote protection with the 4-set for Unholy, which basically during Dark Transformation, there is no chance to reset the buff, okay? Now, what does this mean? You enable the so-called experience and buff from these sets only when you have Dark Transformation? That's the thing, because that just makes for, again, lazy gameplay. So you always use Dark Transformation because it's a DPS cooldown.
Sure.
You're basically, in other words, just buffing Dark Transformation. That's basically your 2-set and your 4-set.
I mean, you're the master on Holy here, but having limited playstyle on Holy, this sounds like you're not going to change anything in your playstyle. You're just going to do the exact same thing.
Oh, there's nothing to be changed. Well, you when you have the Dark Transformation up, you're probably going to forget mostly about Scourge Strike, and you're going to use a lot more Death Coils and Epidemics and AoE. Sure, but regardless, in terms of I'm not even going to go into the territory of, hey, tier set bonuses should alter gameplay. I think it's been a long time since they actually done a tier set like that, properly altering gameplay. No. Right now, we're looking at something that it's, in my opinion, way worse than the first season of tier sets. You remember when we did wrap-ups and stuff and streams and talked about the fact that, man, the tier set bonuses in season 1 are kind of boring. And then everybody would say, and we kind of agree with that, listen, man, it's all about the fact that they introduced the hero talents. They always do this. In season 1, they're going to put some easy, sophomore tier sets, but then in the next season, you're going to get the juicy ones. Well, here are the juicy ones. It's not good.
It's salt water. It's not good, and this is just for DPS. It doesn't help the tanks and the healers either. For the tanks, pretty much every 2-set for a tank procs your biggest defensive wall for a couple of seconds randomly. It has a couple of procs per minute, but you cannot control those procs, which these types of procs, when it comes to a DPS, you can probably average out the curve of performance. Okay, I don't know if this is a good proc, but I get 15 of them over the course of a 6-minute fight. They usually round up to a
I
damage
agree with
increase.
You, but okay, we can talk about this a little bit more specifically. So you can bet your mom that each and every DPS player will have a weak aura tracking the winning streak buff. And it's going to be a very interesting time where you're going to see that winning streak buff coming up and then being cancelled in the next second and then popping up again. And it's a mess, dude. I get the whole gambling bit. I get the whole, I get what they're trying to deliver here with this whole get the buff, but you can have a chance to cancel the buff. It's very gambly. I get it. It's goblin culture, whatever. The implementation of such a theme is, in my opinion, it feels very, very bad, if at least not changing anything in your gameplay, just frustrating to play. Because, okay, maybe you don't make a weak aura to track that bonus. You're going to look up on the top right corner, you're going to see the winning streak buff. Same thing, you got to think about the experience here. When you see you get a buff, it's good times, right? If that buff stays for 1 second, it's no good. It's what buff in this world? I'm going to give an example for Whisper. He did recently an assassination testing video where he tested out the tier set. Is basically the same thing. If I'm not, I could be mistaken, but in essence, Rupture, the ticks from Rupture would have a chance to activate the winning streak, and then poisons would have, and venoms or something, other ability similar to Frost would cancel it. And he showed it off, basically doing his thing. He would get a stack of a buff, maybe 2. The next second, if he had poisons applied, canceled. And it was such a janky feel to look at that, because that would be if these tier sets remain like this in this design,
I would be surprised
the experience of a lot of players, and that's just weird. I mean, there's no impact. You don't change your rotation for shit. I'm pretty sure a lot of people will fall into the trap of, well, I'm probably not going to use these abilities because they'll cancel my buff.
Yeah, that's the intuitive response that you would have when looking at this and seeing, oh, obliteration cancel my buff. I don't want to use obliteration, but obliteration is the biggest damage source that Frost has. They feel so I can accept the fact that they want something different, something crazy, something wacky that might match up with the theme. Obviously, the execution is not there. Obviously, if they keep it like this, it's gonna flop entirely. But they're not. They're definitely gonna tune them. They're definitely gonna make them, because they've done this every PTR cycle, every patch cycle.
Yeah, but it's really good for us to call it early.
Yeah, it's very important, and because it's also disconnected from how the classes and specs play in general, because you cannot have the same buff for every class. It doesn't work.
So stupid.
It doesn't work. For instance, if we take a look at the healer one, you get the insurance buff that puts a hot on the target. Hots are essentially ways of healing that certain healers interact with, certain healers do not. Resto Druid might really like this one because it's a hot.
Yeah.
Restoration Shaman, on the other hand, will probably not like this at all, and you cannot really play around it. Not to mention that the insurance, and this can segue into the tank issue as well.
Yeah.
The insurance buff procs when you're hurt, when you go below 40% HP, I think it's right now.
I can read it for blood. So each time you take damage, you
Not
have a
blood.
chance.
No, healer.
Oh, for healer.
Yeah, I'm talking about the healer one.
Resto Shaman. So your healing spells have a chance to apply insurance to their targets that heals them for blah 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 spell power over 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Insurance is consumed if an ally drops below 40% health to heal them for way lower spell power. That's the two sets.
So the thing is, you don't have control over who gets this hot. So unless we have like a lot of procs, and right now there's not that many procs per minute to make sure that, let's say if you're healing in a raid, everybody gets it. Because what if somebody drops to 40% that doesn't have the insurance, or somebody that has insurance never drops to 40% and that goes away? The problem with RNG tied to survivability is something that I don't remember a single time in the last 7 years of WoW where this has been a good design that people played around, were excited about, or was even performing well. Because you have the tank example where on the 2 set you proc your big defensive. Icebound Fortitude for Blood Decay, Shield Wall for Prot Warrior, whatever. But do you need that defensive when it procs? And if you don't need it, then this is essentially a pointless proc. You're never going to play. First of all, you're not going to play around it. Second of all, you're not going to care. Because if you're not taking damage in this
Icebound is a big defensive, right? I mean, I can see it working in a way where, I don't know, maybe get 2 more or 3 more charges of Bone Shield, something more in that vein. If you're gonna like link it to a major cooldown, like a Blood Decay uses Icebound Fortitude, dude, it's a bit too much and it feels worthless. It's like, make it valuable.
That's not, and the problem, that's not how combat is designed for tanks. And
maybe it is, because you can one-shot in Mythic.
In raids is, okay, well, raids is probably going to be pointless because the only time you want to put your Icebound Fortitude out is when a big tank boss is coming, like let's say Ansurix, Liquefy, or Feast, right? Whenever those come out, that's when you want to use a defensive. Now, if it procs randomly throughout the fight, it doesn't mean anything. And if you cannot get the
value of it,
but also agency of your defensive cooldowns, then there's no point. If anything, the only equivalent way of this working is if whenever this would proc the 4 seconds, instead just shave off some cooldowns off of your defensive so that you have more casts of your defensives, use a little bit more throughout the fight.
Or if it's a Blood Decay, I don't know, maybe give a buff to like the next heal for this strike, something that...
Oh sure, well that's if we
too much. We're asking for too much.
If we completely get rid of the same thing for every role, then yeah, if we make it specific for the spec, then yeah, sure, let's do something a lot more interesting.
Again, like it's not about the fact that they're risking it and we don't like taking risks. As I said in the beginning, like they could have went full on out the theme of it and just have different elements activate purely out of your abilities. Like as the example with Templar's Verdict for Red Paladins will just throw up a couple of light bombs around. That's experimental, that's cool, that would engage on something. And we can think of a million different ideas. I just feel, I think we both feel, that this iteration of tier set bonuses is just lazy,
it's lazy,
and not
cheap.
very thought. I mean, it generally feels they rushed it up to have something to show people.
That's the problem that we have right now with Siren Isle, and that's the problem with the content. In the grand scheme of the optics that we have is that they're working on 3 expansions at the same time. So the explanation is like maybe they don't have time. Well, this was not the deal. This was not the solution. If you work on 3 expansions supposedly to bring out content quicker, not to sacrifice the quality of that content. And we've seen it again with the tier systems that we have right now.
Yeah, conclusion on this being that it's time to test it out. It's time to like feedback it, and without sounding overly dramatical or overly critical or things like that, I think we gave some examples on how could these things work. We are here to like feedback, and I'm pretty sure they mentioned that they await our feedback and testing.
Sure.
We have this platform and we can make our voices heard, but you guys can also like throw it in the comments, go on the forums, especially on the forums. The devs read a lot of the forums, and just say your piece there. Maybe you like them like this. I don't know. What I can say for sure is that we do not like them, and
even if it's a month into the patch and you're realizing, holy shit, this shit might be a little bit too late.
It might be a little too late. But what we do like is the actual tier set, not bonuses, appearances.
Yes. Oh, that's such a hard contrast, man, because they're like 80% of them are so good.
Exactly. So you can check them out on Flame's head right here and see the bangers and a couple of losers. All right? Click it. Thank you. Bye.